Here is a story that dates back to 1910, but almost any student at Huntingdon College in Montgomery, Alabama, should recognize it. That's because the events that led up to it are said to have actually happened. As the story goes, in 1910, a young woman who was new to the school was known for her love of the color red. Sadly, she was also known for being strange and a loner. As the first term got underway, the young woman grew increasingly isolated. Eventually, she took her life by slashing her wrists. Her body was discovered in a red gown, drenched in blood. From then on, students and faculty have been reporting sightings of a young woman dressed all in red. She's appeared all around the college's campus. The figure, dwelling in perpetual isolation, is often cited as a reminder of the importance of being kind to one's peers. Huntingdon College is just one of many haunted colleges in America, each with its own ghost stories. This next true tale comes from the University of Michigan in Ann Arbor. The haunting happened in 1972 at a party hosted by University of Michigan students living on Ashley Street. A 15-year-old girl, who probably had no business being there in the first place, suddenly felt a strange, bone-chilling cold, according to the Michigan Daily. In an attempt to warm up, she went upstairs, because heat rises, we guess. That's when things really went awry. One of the walls of the house started moving, and a black shadow approached the girl. Meanwhile, downstairs, posters were spontaneously popping off the walls and falling into a growing pile on the floor. The girl wandered back downstairs, where she found herself saying these strange words. "The drugs and addiction were my fault, and I accept responsibility for that, but I was not that way deep down inside. I want to apologize to everyone involved for what I have done." What made those words even stranger was that the girl did not do drugs, let alone have an addiction. Her words didn't seem all that strange to the students who lived in the house. Before they moved in, the house had been inhabited by a man with a very serious addiction. The reason he no longer lived there: he had died of a heroin overdose. Has the ghost of Ashley Street made any more appearances? That remains a mystery. This real-life ghost story concerns a man named Frederick Jordan, who held one of the most lonely and desolate jobs in existence. Jordan was the lighthouse keeper for Penfield Reef Lighthouse off the coast of Fairfield, Connecticut. Built in 1874, the lighthouse was primarily a way of warning ships of a treacherous, hidden reef responsible for more than its fair share of harbor accidents. In 1916, Frederick Jordan was the head lighthouse keeper. Tragically, he drowned in a boating accident just before Christmas of that year, when he was caught in a gale while rowing home to see his family. Ever since then, lighting and equipment malfunctions in the lighthouse have been blamed on Jordan's spiritual presence. But even more chilling is that keepers of the Penfield Reef Lighthouse often find the lighthouse logbook open to the day Jordan died. And locals have recounted witnessing an unidentifiable figure appearing on the water to help stray boats find their way to safety near the reef. This true ghost story might strike you as more awe than eek, but only until you consider that we really have no idea what our four-legged friends can sense that we cannot. Can dogs see ghosts? Well, there are plenty of dog experts out there, including veterinarians, who will attest to the fact that there's lots of documentation that could support the notion that dogs can sense paranormal activity. As Jesus Aramendi, DVM, a senior veterinarian for Chewy, put it. And then there's the fact that this story came to Reader's Digest directly from a well-known psychic medium, Christy Robinette, who has a strong record for using her ghost whispering skills to help detectives solve confounding cases. Marlene settled onto her side of the bed and patted Jack's pillow beside her, Robinette told Reader's Digest. A year had gone by, but Marlene was still adjusting to widowhood. Maybe it was crazy to think that after 40 years of marriage, she would ever adjust. Elmer the golden retriever seemed to understand this from the very first. That cold, moonless night when Marlene returned, alone, from the hospital, Elmer did something he'd never done before. He jumped up onto Jack's side of the bed and lay his head on the pillow. Jack would never have allowed it, Robinette pointed out, but Marlene didn't shoo him off. Instead, she lay down beside Elmer and let the peaceful sound of his snoring lull her to sleep. The next night was the same, and the night after that. Over the past year, it had grown into a comforting routine. But not tonight. Tonight was the first time Elmer had left Marlene alone in the bed since Jack's passing. But hearing nails clicking on the wood floor downstairs, Marlene recognized the sound of Elmer requesting outsies. With a sigh, Marlene made her way down the stairs to the foyer. But Elmer wasn't pacing in front of the big oak door. Rather, he was dancing, and wagging, and wiggling and bowing, just like he used to do when Jack would come home from work. To Marlene, it felt as if Jack had just come home, and Robinette, who is known for her remarkable intuition about these things, believes that is, indeed, what happened. Roanoke Colony was one of the first European settlements in the United States. Located on an island off the coast of what is now the state of North Carolina, the colony was established in 1587 under the auspices of the first Queen Elizabeth. Soon after, the colony's leader, John White, returned to England, from where the settlers came. His trip was meant to be brief. He was only meant to grab supplies and return to the New World. But political upheaval, in the form of England's war with Spain, prevented White from returning until 1590. It was only 3 years, but a lot had changed when John White returned. In fact, the entire colony, consisting, at the time, of 115 people, including a newborn baby by the name of Virginia Dare, was gone, just up and vanished. All that was left was a post onto which the word Croton had been carved. Croton referred to the name of a native tribe that had been on good terms with the settlers. So White thought the colonists had moved to Croton Island, now known as Hatteras, North Carolina. But they had not. It remains one of the most famous disappearances that no one can explain. What's more, there's never been any evidence to suggest the colony was massacred. Many believe that baby Virginia grew into a beautiful young woman, one who eventually fell into a doomed love affair with a native warrior by the name of Okisco. To this day, she haunts the woods in search of her man, often in the form of a diaphanous white deer, one that always vanishes at dawn. According to Encyclopedia, a state encyclopedia maintained by the North Carolina Government and Heritage Library, longtime residents of the island have no doubt that the identity of the phantom deer is the ghost of Virginia Dare. This is the story of 2 young princes, brothers Edward and Richard, who were imprisoned in the Tower of London to prevent them from becoming king and heir apparent, respectively. In April 1483, when King Edward IV died, his eldest son, Edward V, who was just 12 years old, briefly became king. Because of his young age, he had a regent appointed. That regent was the young king's uncle. Known as the Duke of Gloucester, this uncle was known to be deeply resentful that the boys even existed. If it weren't for them, he would have been next in the line of succession. What happened next is shrouded in mystery. Indeed, it is one of the strangest British royal family mysteries. It appears that the young king and his brother, Richard, the Duke of York, were kidnapped and locked away in the Tower of London, after which the Duke of Gloucester declared himself King Richard II. The 2 young princes were never seen or heard from again, and 2 small skeletons that were eventually found in the tower are believed to be all that's left of them, other than the ghostly apparitions, that is. British papers have reported on visitors who claim to have seen the ghostly figures. Is it tabloid fodder or proof of the paranormal? That's for you to decide.